Hi, Susan. How are you?
Good, how are you?
All right. Oh, I gotta get my headphones. All right, that's probably a little better. Hello again, Susan. Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Yo, how are we doing?
Doing okay. Thanks for getting stuff up on the website. Yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Yeah, yeah. No. All right, we had Bill. Bill's back. All right.
Hello.
Bill, how are we doing?
Bad. How's the I saw the video you posted over for Kendall Square. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it definitely was a culmination of a lot of effort from a lot of different parties, but for Susan and Theo. So the over the Kendall Square MBTA station, the project I've been working on for the last 5 years, we rigged a 160-foot long canopy structure that's essentially a carbon fiber boat and elevated on 26-foot tall stainless steel columns, and we did that on Saturday over the station. So it was definitely a very cool thing to be part of. So I posted a couple videos of it on LinkedIn that Bill's commenting on.
Oh,
That
Cool.
sounds really cool.
Yeah, I definitely never thought I'd be in the boat building business when I got into construction.
Fantastic.
What looked really strange was, and I know you described it to me when we were chatting about it, but those columns are just so small, meaning diameter. Oh,
Yeah, I know it's one of those things where you see it on a plan and then you see it in real life, and you're just like, these things don't look the same.
right. Very interesting. Well, congrats. It looks, I haven't been by in person yet, but I'm hoping to next week. So
Yeah, it's I'm looking forward to. Now we just got to put the metal panel underneath it, and it'll really bring it all together. But it's one of those things where I knew it was going to be big because I'd seen it on the boatyard, but seeing it actually elevated up there, you're just like, oh my goodness, what are we doing?
Fantastic. That's really cool. All right. Very good. Lovely. How you doing, Matt?
Doing all right.
That's excellent.
How are you guys?
All right. That's terrific. All right. Aaron's logging in. Excuse me. Jim, I've made you the co-host.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, I have not done anything as demonstrative as a structure or anything like that. That's pretty awesome. Okay. Let's see, guys. All right. Well, it's 7:01, so I think I will call us to order. Today is the September 27th meeting of the Planning Board. Just to do a quick roll call. Bill Spalding,
Here.
Matt Lowry,
Here.
Jim Hogan,
Here.
and myself, Theo Knoll. I'm here. Delighted to be joined by Susan Auld, our clerk, and Aaron Kokinda, the Economic Development Director in Wakefield. And our first order of business is to approve minutes from our last two meetings. Does anyone have comments on the August 23rd minutes? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
All right, terrific.
Second.
Is there a second? All right. All in favor? Bill Spalding.
Abstain.
Right. All right. Jim Hogan.
Yes.
All right. Matt Lowry.
Yes.
And myself, yes. The minutes are approved. And
Could I add one thing while we're talking?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to get all the minutes and agendas in PDF form? Just because my computer at home, I don't have Word, so I can't really open up anything. So if we could get all documents in PDF, that would be helpful.
All righty.
I know it's a little, not an extra step, but at least for preservation and editing, it's pretty static.
Matt, not that you don't know how to do this, but if you right click on any document in the folder, usually you can convert it to a PDF. I don't know if you want to test that.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. I've got an old computer I use at home because I don't really work from home at all. So
Right.
Hi, Megan. We'll add you to the roll call. Are
Hi, thank
here?
you.
Yeah,
Sorry for my
perfect.
tardiness. I'm here.
Not at all. So we've, just so you know, we've already approved the August 23rd minutes. And is there, does anybody have any comments on the, well, invite you to, Megan. Do you have any comments on the August 23rd minutes or on the September 13th minutes? No comments. Can I get a motion? To approve.
Motion to accept the September 13th, 2022 minutes.
All right, thank you. And
Second.
thank you. All right, and all in favor? Bill Spalding.
Yes.
All right. Megan Minnesota.
Yes.
Matt Lowry.
yes.
All right, Jim Hogan.
Yes.
And myself, Theo Knoll. Yes, terrific. Thank you very much. It's good news that our first item of business, item number 3 rather, is a public forum, not a formal public hearing, but a public forum to, I think, to discuss our procedures for changing street names. This is a bylaw change that we want to bring to town meeting on November 19th. And we've advertised in the daily item, and it's glad that some people have joined us tonight. We want to have a chance to step through the bylaw and our suggested bylaw change. And before I turn it over to the other board members, I really just wanted to say at the outset, we followed a deliberate and conscientious process to really think through a process that would be public, open, and reflective of standard best practices around reviewing and changing street names, given the many impacts that such a change has. And I think we're all pretty pleased that we have a thoughtful and clear process that we want to discuss tonight. Before I invite Bill to, I think, walk us through the bylaw change and open it up to questions, Matt, Jim, or Megan, do you have any opening comments or anything you'd like to share? Okay, all right, that's great. So Bill, can I turn it over to you? I do have the bylaw as a,
I was going to go right to the website. So if you want
Okay.
to allow me to share, I could do that.
Sure.
Any opportunity to
I
show off
believe-
our website.
I believe you can share now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Great.
So I am going to, let me make sure I'm set up here properly. Okay. Trying to close a few things so it makes it a little bit easier. Okay. This should be my whole screen. I think I have,
Yes. We're seeing the
So-
A&R first.
right, so that was me looking at it and reviewing it earlier, but so if you can all see Town of Wakefield, our website, thank you to Jen McDonald for getting this up to date. And if you haven't been to our website, it's under boards and committees, planning board from our main site. And you can see there's a planning board and there's some information here. If they were reviewing projects and how to reach people, especially Erin Kokinda and our clerk, Susan Auld. So agenda is over here on the left, meeting videos, master plan information, street name change bylaw. So just to reiterate what Theo was mentioning too, we don't have a bylaw for this. So we're proposing a new bylaw. So we're not changing a bylaw, not amending a bylaw. It's a street name change option. So I just don't want that to be misunderstood. And the ad that went into the item, and that I think it went on Thursday and then again yesterday. And so here's the proposed, right here, review the proposed bylaw. And as Theo mentioned, we spent some time researching, a bunch of us members did our own research, brought together. We learned some towns and cities take this super seriously, and there's a big fee for filing it, and there's all these different guidelines. So we wanted to make sure we didn't cross over any guidelines and rules and regulations that are already set by the DPW, by the process at Town Hall, or the Massachusetts state process for doing this type of works for applications. So with help from Mr. Mullen, Town Council, because I don't know how to write like this, he really took our bullet points and words and put it into this bylaw lingo. So it's really helpful to see how this will really work out. So the proposed street name bylaw. And Theo, do you, should I read the whole thing, or what do you think?
I don't think so. I think making sort of key points.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was hoping for. So, yep, it's following the guidelines, Massachusetts statutory procedure. And we're looking at like, what is an eligible street and name to be, you know, there's some little rules in here that we looked at, and I'm hoping tonight in our meeting that we discuss some of this, meaning existing way, DPW, meaning how many characters, application process to the town clerk. There is a back and forth, meaning the town clerk shall within 10 days send it off to the appropriate people in the town, meaning the fire chief, police chief, and town engineer, to make sure there isn't a duplication or there isn't an emergency or 911 issue with any of the names. We also want people to be notified. So if you say, if you're on a street or a way or court or whatever, and you don't know what's going on, you're the property owner or you live there, we're concerned that you're not notified, and then all of a sudden you find a new street name. So we want you to be notified, and that's part of the abutters to be notified in this process. I think I said notified enough, but you get the idea. So there would be a public hearing, and 30 days after receiving the application, town clerk, and you can see through here, a notice will go to, once it's approved and go through. So you could see notice of the hearing shall, I'm sorry, not approved, but will be sent to a lot of people in town, so they know what's happening. And then at the end, the very end, action by town council. They'll review, act upon with our report, our recommendation from our board to town council. If it's approved, the name change, right? It goes to town clerk, request payment for the applicant to cover the cost of changing and installing all applicable signage and sending off the notice. So that's covered by the person who wants the name change. Remember, this isn't for a new street name. This is for a change of an existing name. So this is the bylaw that we're proposing that will go to, we hope that will go to town meeting. Did I miss anything? Any other board members want to add info to this or correct anything?
Yeah, we, the changing an existing street name has a lot of ramifications for public safety, access, insurance, mortgages, driver's license, all of that. So yeah, we want to be sort of reasonable and judicious and straightforward. And to your point, that's why you want to notify everyone who would be impacted.
And I just wanted to point out, I know some people may be asking, why are we doing this? But there was a request that came to town hall to actually rename a street. And once it was looked into, we saw that there were no procedures for that. So it was the planning board that took upon themselves to get some general bylaw enacted that would let an individual do this if they chose to. And we also saw that there could be some problems that if there wasn't a procedure in place, that people could start just changing street names with little regard to the neighbors on there or any procedure. So that's the reason why the board took this up.
All right. So the mic is yours, folks on the attending the meeting. Yeah, I'm looking to see if anybody's got their hands raised or anything like that.
That's what I was looking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's worth asking too, is anybody here in attendance that is here for this bylaw? Mr. McGreal?
Yeah.
Oh, can't hear you. I think you muted yourself. Okay.
I just had a thought on this, that I think it's good that you're doing this. I think the bylaw is great. It's very concise, it's straightforward, it's short and sweet. My only comment would be, I think that a lot of these requests might come after a subdivision that you approve goes in, and then, it's not too long after it goes in that they say, oh, gee, we'd like to change the name. We don't like this name. And, I don't think you're going to see it too much on established streets. So my only thought would be, in the first paragraph that starts, any person proposing a change to change the name of existing street shall follow the procedures set forth in the bylaw, which applies to all ways within the town, whether public or private, that are open to public use by the public. So, that's just kind of a gray area, because somebody could say in a new subdivision that it's really not open to the public. It hasn't been accepted as a public way. It's only really allowed, the people that live on the street own the fee in the street, or the developers retained it, anticipating of the town taking it. So my suggestion would be to consider to put that are open to the use by the public, or streets that have been approved by the planning board as part of the subdivision control process. And that would take the argument out that that streets that you've recently approved won't be subject to this, because somebody might say that they're not open to the public at this point. Just a thought.
Can you say that again one more time? I got or streets approved by the planning board.
Which applies to all ways from the town, whether public or private, that are open to public use by the public. And, and also including any streets that have been approved by the planning board as part of the subdivision control process. Something, that's just kind of thinking a lot. It could probably be
Yeah.
worded better with Tom Mullen if you thought it was appropriate to add it, or if I have more time to think about it.
That's a good point. I understand that are open to use by public is the part that could be misconstrued, correct?
Yeah, and I think that probably most of your requests are gonna come from subdivisions that aren't that old. And maybe the streets haven't been accepted as a public way yet, and people want to change it, but just like the chair said, people have already bought houses, they've done mortgages, they have licenses, and now all of a sudden they could say, well, we're not subject to this because it's not open to the public at this point. It hasn't been accepted as a public way. We own the street, and we as the neighbors are saying, hey, we're not letting the public down here. It might be overthinking it, but that just jumped out at me, because I think most of your requests are going to come from that forum.
I think it's a good comment, because if this open to use by the public could negate the eligibility, meaning right here within the preceding 25 years, which we went back and forth with too, and that was what we saw most cities and towns. So things just couldn't be changed back and forth because people wanted to change it begrudgingly.
Mhm.
Right, but Mr. McGrail, to your point, if we don't add some type of, or take away or add the subdivision side to it, then eligibility and the application process pretty much is in jeopardy. Is that what your thought process is?
My thought process would be if you don't add it, someone could make an argument that they're just not subject to this bylaw.
Right.
Now, I guess, I don't know how they're gonna change a name without you guys anyways, to be honest with you. I mean, or town input. So, it might be overthinking it, but it just kind of puts a belt and suspender on it to take out that kind of end run that somebody could try to do to avoid the bylaw.
Understood.
Yeah.
We'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
I thought.
Anyone else? We're delighted that some people are here tonight. All right.
I thought we'd get a comment about the fee,
Yeah,
the filing fee, and then the fact that if it's approved, the applicant and the town clerk, it shall request payment from the applicant to cover the cost of changing and installing all applicable signage and sending notice of the change by certified mail return upon requested to all persons residing on the affected street or owning property thereon. That's a lot of, to me, this is really where it comes down to like who's being notified, and it'll be by certified mail. That way we're sure that each person that would be affected, whether they're owning property or residing there, would at least know they, yeah.
Yeah. The reason we are recommending that is because it's not a town-led process. It's a citizen-led process. And I would think that's, a potential, not a barrier to entry, but a useful user fee to make it straightforward. The
There was one last one I wanted to bring up because it came into some contention. Town clerk shall also assemble a list of the names and addresses of all owners of property abutting in the way question. So residing, similar to that, but we had learned too from the town clerk that they actually don't do the names and addresses, but they do in town hall. They'll be the ones who will get the final list. So the word assemble a list, I guess it's not actually coming from them. It will come, I believe, from the town assessor's office. Was that right, Theo? Or Erin? Yeah.
Yeah, it is the assessor's office.
And I'm wondering is it okay that it's like, yeah, the town clerk will be that point person or office that will make sure that it's all assembled properly?
We thought so. Aaron, do you concur?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Does it make sense to you that the town clerk be sort of the coordinator of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, when anyone comes forward to our board for any of the subdivisions to notify the butters, it always goes right to the town assessor. We make the applicant go there to get the list and send it out. So I would put town assessors, but just be consistent with what our other bylaws say in regards to the subdivisions. I know it's not the same thing, but the consistency of assembling those addresses.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure we have any other comments. We'd certainly welcome more or questions.
A question to you, Theo,
Yeah.
Chair, and maybe to Erin, that did we receive any emails during the week or after the ad was posted, or the public notice? Did anything come through on the emails regarding this?
Not that I saw
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not-
myself personally and planning board.
right.
Yeah.
I know we're up against the high school committee presentation tonight too.
The so in the next steps here are to consider making any text edits to the bylaw. I think we are anticipating that the planning board would vote to approve this and send it to town council for their meeting on October 12th. We do have a meeting ourselves on October 11th. So
Erin has her hand up. I don't know if that's
Oh,
for
sure.
this or not.
Yeah, I just looked at our subdivision. It says a certified, in parentheses, by the assessors, abutters list with stamped address envelopes on each of the abutters. So if we just want to be consistent, that's what the language says.
certified was by
Or Theo, with your permission, I would suggest that we add the final wording to the agenda of our next meeting. And any changes to that will then be sent to town council for review and added to the town warrant.
Hey, Bill / Theo, may I suggest that the nature of the comments we're talking about are pretty minor in scope, and I would recommend that we vote to empower Bill to finalize the language based on the direction to update consistent with the language that Aaron just referenced, and update the language in accordance with this recommendation from Attorney McGrail, based on the nature of those comments being relatively minor. Empower Bill to finalize that, and then just vote to empower him to send that to the town council for the referral in order to get it onto the warrant.
I'm very comfortable with that too. How are you, Bill?
Yeah, would you be surprised if I've already made the changes as we're talking?
I guess that's my point, is I don't know if we need to talk about it in another meeting, because I feel like it's
Sure.
pretty
Well,
minor.
my point is to have it on the agenda for the next meeting so it can be reviewed. Is that, maybe that's a better approach? I just want to make sure we get a final public meeting. I don't think vote is the right word, but before we send it off.
I would advocate on waiting because, you know, people are tuning into our meetings after, you know, when it's been recorded and posted.
point.
So there are going to be more people that see this. They may have some comments. I think we should be open to, we're trying to make this an open process. So I don't think there's no need to rush it right now because we have a little bit of time. So I would advocate on rewriting it, reposting it, and then at our next meeting, completing it to send on.
I'm very comfortable with that. Do we need to have another public forum? Easy to keep it open.
I don't believe we need to have another one.
Okay. All right.
I
Okay.
think, I don't know, Matt, I don't want to discount what you shared, but I think if we do receive anything through email or if any of our members are contacted, I would expect that member or Theo to notify me of any comments that have come in, and that could trigger us to review it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, we could do that, but we still haven't seen what the new, you know, we haven't seen the new wording of it. So I think once we get that wording set, we should at least all be able to see it before we approve it without knowing what the final wording is going to be.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's terrific. And we don't have, I mean, we won't take a lot of time at the next meeting to review this, but certainly be open to it. All right. We were also rushing against the clock because we thought we were going to miss the next town council meeting.
There's a public member with their hand up. Theo, I don't know if you see
No, I
Mr.
don't.
Zola.
Sure. Yeah, I can't find him. Oh, there it is.
He has his hand up from the Wakefield item.
Trying to unmute. All right. He's certainly welcome to. Neil, can you unmute yourself? I'm having trouble.
No,
No. No.
Okay.
Oh, there he goes. Good.
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hi, my name is Neil Zola with the Wakefield Daily Item, and I'm doing a story on the on this name change bylaw. And I'm just wondering if one of you, I'd like to maybe try to speak to some of you on the phone tomorrow, but I was also wondering if someone could address why this is even being undertaken. You know, what was there a pressing need? Were there names that are offensive because they're Native American names or named after unsavory people or that sort of thing?
Yeah, there was a Sardella Way, and we wanted to remove that completely from. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was somebody approached town hall and asked, "Is there a process?" And there isn't one. So as the planning board, we looked at other towns and cities, and it's the planning board that usually decides this. So we thought to be proactive, like we like to be as this board, and put something together and get it in front of a town. So nobody has actually brought up a change that I know of, but we want it to be there. Is
Actually,
that true, Matt? Did somebody
no.
bring one up?
There has been one
Okay.
person has proposed a street name change, and it's actually been in, I think they requested it about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And because there was no procedure, really no one took action on it. So that's why we decided to basically host a bylaw, general bylaw, to get this, to get something on the books. We figured if people started changing the names of streets and there were no procedures, there could be ripe for abuse. So we just want to make sure there's a process in place. So that's why we're doing this.
Could you mention the name of the street that was in question?
I would rather not, just let, I don't know if they're going to go forward with it, but I suppose you could get that from town hall if you want it.
So is this something that comes up in conversation at the coffee shop or in social circles where like, oh, there's no farm on Farm Road, so that's a facetious example, I know, but and I'm assuming there's no street named after Jefferson Davis, but I'm just wondering if this is, for any of the members, has this come up in conversation at all? Like just around the coffee shop or at the church or bridge club or what have you?
Neil,
Yeah.
for your reference,
Yes.
Matt may know what street was being proposed, but in the public forums that we've had to date, which have been a number, that change has not been referenced, and so the other members of the planning board have undertaken this effort without without a specific name change in mind, and that is a conscious decision in order to reflect a process being developed kind of in a neutral setting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
What I'm going to do, if I could just one more comment, I'm going to email Mr. Spalding and maybe Miss Kokinda, if I'm hope I'm not mispronouncing that, because I have a copy of the proposed bylaw, and then I missed the early part of the meeting to get some of the changes. I don't know if they were boilerplate changes or just something substantive about, I did hear that it wouldn't be the town clerk assembling the list, it would be someone else at town hall. I don't know if there was anything before that, or you just read it over as a matter of public record. So I'll try to be in touch with someone tomorrow.
Yeah, I would say that the two changes under consideration were to tighten up the language in the opening paragraph and to be consistent in our process, referring to the role of the town assessor's office. So that's very process minor or changes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very good. All right.
Unless you have anything else to add to that.
I appreciate your attendance and being curious. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it struck me. I'm again, if anybody wants to comment, it struck me as sort of unusual, because I know they're changing the high school logo, and I think Melrose changed from Red Raiders to Raiders, and it struck me as sort of in sync with that, and also just like, how often does this come up?
Yeah, I think Jim's answer was spot on.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank Thank you very much. All right, so we will discuss this at our next meeting and vote to approve it. And then we will send that to the town council for their review and approval, so that we can get it on the warrant. All right. Thank you very much. Then item 4 on our agenda is the A&R plan that's presented to us at 314, 330, and 336 Salem Street. And I think we would like to call on Brian McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing the Valenti family, Sal, Helen, and an entity known as 330 Salem Street LLC, which has some family relations also, situated on Salem Street. This property is where Wildflowers is located. I think you know where the corner is near the Prime Station, and the Valentis are in the process of trying to kind of clean up what's going on there. There's a lot happening. There's a business on a corner. There's a legal non-conforming 4-family in the back. There's a single family in the back, and they are going to they're looking to reconfigure these lots with the end goal to kind of clean up the property. And I always, even though it's not an A&R, it's an A&R plan, and we can just take the position, hey, this is an A&R plan. You have to, in our opinion, you have to sign it. I never like to operate that way. I just don't think it's right. I don't like to say, hey, do this, and we'll tell you what we're going to end up doing later. So I'd like to tell you what we're thinking our end goal is going to be, end game is going to be here, which I think is going to be a benefit to what's happening out at that corner. The goal is to keep the single family house in the back at some point, which is way out back. There's a 4-family in front of that. We're probably looking to raise that and build a single family house instead of 4. And then where the business takes place out front, we place that with a modest multifamily dwelling with no mixed use in it. And we think it will really clean up that area. We're in the process of doing planning on that, but we need to reconfigure some lot lines to make that happen. If I could share my screen. Is that okay?
Please do.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just. Thought this might help just to kind of give the, again, just for background purposes, even though it's really not part of the A&R process. You are the planning board. I respect that. And I like to kind of tell a story of why things are happening here. I think you deserve that instead of just showing up with a plan saying, hey, you need to sign this. So this is kind of what's going on at the site. You have a lot of storage out there. As you know, I think you guys have driven by it quite a number of times. Just another perspective. One more. What you really don't see is kind of what's going on out back. This is where that legal non-conforming use is. You've got 4 units back here. You got a single family house out back. So this will all come down and be cleaned up. And we think it will obviously require an extensive process before the zoning board if it were ever to happen, if it were to go forward, with a number of permits. But we just kind of want to give you an idea of what our thoughts are. And I hope you appreciate that. But it is kind of, the Valentis, most of the people that are online here tonight are the Valentis or their family members. I think, the property's kind of a mishmash of what's happening out there, and it's a good opportunity to potentially clean it up. So, and we're just starting that process. So, we're not in the process of looking at plans. We'll be talking to members of the neighborhood. So we're really, but this is just the process to start it. So with that said, I think maybe I should bring up the plan if I can. Just Okay. So I didn't mention John Ogren from Hayes Engineering is here with me tonight, who prepared the plan. This is the A&R plan. It's not too dissimilar from the 1986 A&R plan that was prepared. As you can see, the lot is split. So the front portion of the property is in the business district. The lot frontage requirement in the business is 40 feet. We abut a public way. We meet the requirement of an A&R plan, and that we have legal frontage on a public way because each of our lots have the minimum required 40 feet. So this is lot 3 out back with our frontage of 40 feet. This is lot 1, which has significantly more than that, well over 100 feet. And then lot 2, which is kind of in the middle, which is where that 4-family unit building is that will come down, has 40 feet. So we feel we meet the requirements for an approval not required plan. Again, this was subject to an A&R plan back in '86, which was somewhat similar. I can show you that plan if you want to see it. But in any event, we think it's a fairly straightforward requirement, or request, I should say. Happy to answer any questions. We're also contemplating that there'll be some proposed easements for access. They're really not, we're just showing those for disclosure purposes. And we put those on the plan. But John and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have, Mr. Chair.
Are there any board members with questions? Yeah, Jim.
For lot 3, am I reading this right? And what is the width of you have a 40 feet of frontage, but then there is, next down substantially and becomes kind of a serpentine,
Yeah.
Squiggly line over to the balance of the parcel. Can you just, how wide is that? And what's the thought process behind that?
It's 5 feet, Jim. And the thought process is that the eventual access to the lot is going to be through a easement driveway, which will come across lots 1 and 2. So you can kind of see the detail blow up here of the common driveway that comes off, and will serve lot 1, will serve lot 2 and lot 3. And I don't know if I answered your question, but it's about 5 feet wide, Jim.
You mean 5 feet from the edge of the lot to the driveway?
No, I think what Mr. Hogan was requesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hogan, is you wanted to know the width of this. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. So that's 5 feet.
If I'm right, or if I'm remembering this right, there are 2 lots there are zoned now, right?
Yeah, well, they also own 314. So 314 is, if you follow my mouse, that's part of this. That's the formal lot line of that. But the original, which I'm going to show you, because that's a good point, and it might be helpful for some context. The original, let me just open that. This is the current A&R plan. This is an A&R plan that was signed by the planning board, approval not required, back in 1986, which created that. You're right, Mr. Chair. There's 2 lots. This is the business. It's 330. This is the 4-unit building in the back, and that's the house. And what they did here is they cut it into 2 lots, lot 1 and 2. They gave lot 1 40 feet of frontage. And then they gave lot 2 100 feet of frontage. But this is the lot line. It's kind of really odd. You can see it. This is all part of lot 2 in the back. And then it comes back, and then it has a similar pinch point to us, which is really not even 5 feet. It's about 3 feet right here, because this is the property line right here. And then this is a single family home out back. So what they did on this plan is they created an easement for access on this side of the property. What we plan on doing is you saw, we're gonna kind of flip it to the other side. But this has the same pinch points that we're dealing with. So that was the original plan that divided 330 and 336 back in 1986.
So Brian, aren't you gonna need a variance for the common driveway?
We would need a variance for the common driveway, Matt, correct?
So until you get that, these would be non-buildable lots, correct? Without access?
Well, no, they have access. I mean, let me go back to the plan. Hang on. So they have access. They each have their own access.
Well, you can't, so for lot 3, you can't drive a car.
No, but
on
you can
5
get,
feet.
you can get 2 or 3 cars off the roadway. You don't have illusory access here. You can drive onto your lot. It's not like there's an impediment, like a guardrail or wetlands or something that's preventing you from exiting the public way to get onto your lot.
So you're gonna say you'd have the parking up at that front there?
You could, I mean, you know, but to create these lots, these lots themselves, the shape, they're all gonna need, there's gonna be significant relief that's gonna be needed at the zoning board of appeals. But, you know, for purposes of the A&R plan, as you know, what the standard is if there's frontage on a public way. And each of these lots have it. If we couldn't get off of the public way, we couldn't, you know, if we had a pinch point that we couldn't even get a vehicle off the public way, then, you know, it would be illusory access, but we have access. You can see the same thing goes for lot 2. I mean, lot 2, actually, this lot line is actually 15 feet all the way down to lot 2. So there's plenty of room to get vehicles off here also. But you're right, Matt, you know, there's gonna be multiple relief here that we're gonna need from the zoning board as far as the project goes. But as you know, that's why we put the notation on here. If the planning board endorses this, no determination as to compliance with zoning ordinance requirements has been made, nor can be construed as intended by this endorsement. That's why that is on there.
So in the original subdivision, lot 3 had 100 feet of frontage. Is that because it was in a residential zone?
I don't know why they did that. No, you can see it. It all follows. It all
Well,
follows.
the building is in a residential zone.
Yeah, but that's the use of the land. You know, as far as dimensions on the lot, the frontage is up here. That's why, you know, that's why here, I mean, this was no different. Because on this one, if you go back to let me switch back. I should keep them both up. It's easier. It is unique, for sure.
I actually had to color code mine to understand it.
Yeah, it's unique. So on this one, you know, on this one, this is a residential use. That zoning line is like back, is beyond this. It's like back, it's like up here. And on this one, they have they just flipped it. I don't know why, because they have 40 feet on this side, 23.24 plus 16.76, 40 feet. And then they gave this 100 feet. I don't know why they did that. In my mind, there was no requirement to do that.
And is that front lot going to be a 40B development?
No. No.
While we're talking just about what it might be, do we
Yeah,
know if this is a brownfield or if there's any contamination on the site? Is that something that's
Haven't got,
known?
I don't think so. I mean, but we haven't even gotten.
Understood.
Yeah, no, but the plan, we think, we think that we will have a really tasteful proposal for this. That is not gonna really, it's gonna have much less traffic impact of what's happening out there now. It's gonna organize the property. There's not gonna be any cars out front. Once we're done, that, our plan is not to do a 40B here, is to actually go to some of the neighbors and engage with them and make this a process that we work with everybody to make a good project here. That's what we think we can accomplish compared to what's out there today. There's some definite opportunities out here. If you drive by there and you see some of the stuff going on and how things are parked and how the property's situated. This is kind of one of those properties that, Matt, you've talked about this with other properties that your board has dealt with, that it's kind of, the zoning lines and things that have happened out there. It's kind of like a lost property that needs some care and some thoughtfulness. And that's what the Valentis are ready to do that with the property.
I just can't, I don't know why this isn't a subdivision, because you're basically moving, you're creating a shared driveway in order to get to the back two
Well, no,
parcels,
we're just
basically.
saying that we plan on probably doing that. I don't think we have to. I mean, what's the difference here? This lot here, you can't get a vehicle to the lot all the way to the house.
Well, there's an existing right of way now.
No, but I'm talking about when the board endorsed this plan back in 1986, it's the same thing.
Well, that was back in 1986. Maybe they didn't question that. I don't know. But,
Well, I mean,
that's why I'm looking at that now. It seems,
there's no need to have a driveway all the way to your house. You don't want to. So I'm saying that our plan is entitled to endorsement, notwithstanding the fact that we're showing that access point that we plan on potentially doing as a driveway. If you want us to take that off, we'll take it off. We just wanted to kind of show you what our thoughts were. That was really the purpose of putting it on.
Attorney McGraw, how long is it from you have the 40 feet of access where you could theoretically have the cars parked off street to the back of lot 3? Because I think from my perspective, the fact that it necks down to 5 feet to me is I get the concept, that it's a paper, it's a piece of paper that's in actuality when you go to actually execute this and obtain all the relevant approvals.
Sure.
But for the purposes of an A&R, setting aside all of those kind of, I would call it after the fact considerations, we have to adjudicate whether or not the access is illusory. And this, to me, it feels like it's kind of on the threshold, it necks down to 5 feet. Even the 15-foot one, I feel like is a lot easier to internalize from my perspective for, providing adequate access. But I mean, how long, theoretically, right, if you guys just A&R'd and then developed, with the lots of land, how far would you theoretically be walking from that that easement spot where you have the 40 feet of access to the back of where the house would be?
It would be
John-
about 250 feet.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, in my opinion, that feels like it's a little long. Again, I commend you guys for what you're planning or you're trying to do in terms of cleaning up this, and it looks like you have a rat's nest of easements and other lot lines, and I think that you're right in terms of the division of different uses in terms of the actual zoning lines, crisscrossing the properties makes it more complicated. But to me, having it neck down to 5 feet is tough from an access and not calling it illusory at that point. I'd be interested in hearing what other members of the board feel, but that's kind of where my when I reviewed this, that's kind of what my gut check was.
I'm still not convinced this isn't a subdivision. And I'd need to look into a little bit more. Also, I know we have our subdivision rules and regulations for A and R, our requirements for A and Rs. One of them is that lot numbers will not be duplicated. So this is clearly one where there was lots 1 and 2 before, and you use 1, 2, and 3 this time. So clearly that wasn't looked at all. So just, for that one thing, our regulations need to be looked at and adhered to, and it seems like that's not happening too much. So I need to look into more about this actually having a 5-foot, say, walkways. You say technically you could have 2 parking spaces out there, and then I suppose you could walk back and forth to your house. Moving a refrigerator and couch and things might be a little problematic, actually, without an actual, extra easement, but put that aside, I suppose you could technically walk back and forth. So I still think this borders on a subdivision, and I'd need to look into a little bit more. I wouldn't be comfortable endorsing this tonight.
I did just want to address as far as what Jim had mentioned. There's an appeals court case, Fox v. Milton, that talks about the requirements, and basically what the court came down is, if all the lots have the requisite frontage on a public way and the availability of access implied by that frontage is not shown to be illusory. In fact, it is of no concern to the planning board that the developer may propose a common driveway. Okay, so that it talks about that. The subdivision control law is concerned with access to the lot, not to the house. There is nothing in it that prevents owners from choosing, if they are so inclined, to build their houses far from the road with no provision for vehicular access. So, so long as the lots have the frontage for access, making access possible. So I think there is some background on this, and it is consistent with what was done in 1986, because it's the exact same thing. I will say this. If you don't sign from our perspective, and you tell me if you disagree, if you don't endorse the A&R plan, I guess the worst thing from our perspective is that we have to go to your board for a subdivision with a bunch of waivers, and then also to the planning board, right?
You mean the ZBA?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Matt. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for correcting me. Yeah. I mean, I think that will be the repercussion, because you would deem it to be a subdivision, not entitled to an A&R endorsement.
Correct.
Right, yeah, I mean, we feel we have the rights to the A&R endorsement. We respect your need to look at it. But from our perspective, it's not the end of the world. We feel at the end of the day, we're gonna have, compared to what's happening out there, we're gonna have something so superior that we're not we feel we can present it to any board and many boards, and it's gonna be looked at by everybody as a significant improvement on what's out there today. So that, I mean, that's our worst case scenario. Obviously, from our perspective, as you can imagine, and being honest, we'd rather just deal with one board from the time perspective and and all the filing fees and numbers of hearings and stuff like that. It's just more concise. So that's our objective, to have the A&R plan done from your board's perspective. We're certainly not trying to do an end run on your board, because again, as I've said, we feel that our product is going to be great anyways. So
and Brian, I understand that. I really don't want you to, I don't want to cause you to have, extra expense, but I'm really uncomfortable with the common driveway that's going to serve 2 lots in the back. And what appears to me like, and I need to look into it, illusionary access, if you didn't have that. Without that easement, if say I'm looking at, if you want to do anything with lot number 3, how would you get back there? So there have to be more easements granted. It seems like, again, I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with it at this point without looking into it more.
I understand. Yeah, I respect that, Matt.
And on top of that, again, our A&R rules and regs should be adhered to also. So,
Yeah, I mean,
Duplication of
John
lot
can
numbers.
speak to that. My interpretation of that section would be that you can't duplicate lot numbers, like you can't have 2 lot 2s. Not that you can't reuse numbers, like if you're gonna redivide the land, you can't create a new lot 1, 2, and 3. Because to look at a plan that doesn't have a lot 1, 2, and 3 and has a 7, 8, 9, as a real estate attorney and doing a lot of work in land court at the registry of deeds, if I see lot 7, 8, 9, I'm looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, saying where the heck are they? So I think it's good practice to if you're not creating additional lots, to go back to 1. But that's not the way you read the rule. I mean, that's easily solved. That's for you to contemplate and think about. It's not.
okay,
It's more procedural than
yeah.
than the other parts of it.
I have a point to make. So the existing lot that has a single residence house in the back currently has an easement that it has rights into access from Salem Street to the house. Now, if we were to just go and change these lot lines, it would still have those rights to that easement. We're not changing it. I mean, that's our end goal would be to eliminate it, but as the plan stands, it has access across that existing easement.
But not to the lot at this point, because you've moved the lot line back. So you would have it partway, but it wouldn't come all the way to that lot. So you're basically taking away that, if you claim you have access from that easement prior, that's fine. But you're moving that lot line away from that easement. So you've
Correct.
removed that access.
But I thought the argument was that it was a long distance from where you would potentially park a vehicle to the existing house, whereas if you could drive at least up to the end of that easement, you'd be a lot closer to that house.
That is true. I think the example that Brian gave, that you could park a car up there, in theory, it is correct. In practice, never happened. So no one's going to have a 5-foot piece of their land they're going to carry things back and forth on. If they need to do work in the house, how are they going to get back there?
Yeah, I think it's a theoretical discussion. I think, we feel that entitles us to the endorsement. Whether someone's actually going to use that or not is really, that's just a discussion. We've already told you what our plans are at the end of the day.
With permission, Theo, can I share my screen? I went and actually pulled up an excerpt from that Fox v. Milton case that Attorney McGrail referenced, and I think that might be useful in terms of this conversation. So this is from the A&R, control handbook that other members of the planning board, I'm sure, have seen and used. But the section that I was just looking at in this is a excerpt Fox v. Milton. Is that it says that it's the subdivision control law is concerned with access to the lot, not to the house, and that there's nothing in it that prevents the owners from choosing, if they are so inclined, to build their house far from the road with no provision for vehicular access. so long as the lots have frontage, which makes such access possible. So I think to Attorney McGrail's earlier point, the fact that there is access to the lot from the roadway that provides sufficient access for the 40 feet, and then it snakes back. I think that this case seems to indicate that there would be some support for that position.
Doesn't this presume adequate frontage for the use of the land, not as it's zoned? So like the zoning and the use of the land are commensurate, so that, you know, single family house, single family zoning. So I mean, we are mashing together business frontage with a residential use, and then snaking it through that neck.
I think for the purposes of the A&R plan, it's related to what adequate frontage as defined by the underlying zoning. And since the site is located in a single family residential, it would be subject to the single family residential frontage requirements, which are being met by the kind of the wedge.
Oh, I maybe I misunderstood. I thought the wedge meant the business frontage, not the single family frontage.
Yeah, they're meeting the business frontage, not the single family.
That's right. That's where the frontage is. It's in the business district.
Yeah.
Not in the single residence district. The front of the property is in the business district. The frontage requirement in the business district is 40 feet wide.
Single family frontage is 100.
Single family is 100, but our frontage is not in the single resident zoning district.
Yeah. And Mr. Ogren's point, I think the rezoning sort of squeezes you out of that existing easement. So you've sort of,
Yeah.
you
My take on, if I'll guarantee you that the easement on that plan from 1986 was not in place prior to that A&R endorsement. It happened afterwards. I have researched it, to be honest with you. I know how it works. People aren't, until a plan's recorded, you can't, until you have a plan, you can't record an easement referencing two lots that don't exist. So it's a very similar circumstance to what we have here, and that's why I showed it, because you had a tighter pinch point. You only had about 2 or 3 feet that you could get through, and it's the same fact pattern. We have 5 feet. And again, that lot that we're showing cannot, that lot, we could not record the A&R plan if it was endorsed until we had every bit of relief from the zoning board. And we would take that beautiful single family home out back that we want to keep, and it would become illegal because it would now be on a lot that doesn't meet any of the zoning requirements about relief for the zoning board. So, this is just a prelude to going to the Board of Appeals and kind of an ability for us to get there, to get the relief to do the cleanup project that we're trying to do on the site. That's why it has that notation on there that, it warns the world. Just because the planning board endorsed this doesn't mean there's compliance with zoning in any way. So if we end up, if this plan is endorsed and we go to the Board of Appeals and we don't get the approvals, or everybody thinks it's a terrible plan and it doesn't get approved, this plan's going to end up in my my archives forever and never go on record at the Registry of Deeds.
So do you meet the coefficient irregularity for these lots or not?
Oh my God, I don't think so, John.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either.
No.
This is just a process question. Like what, why are you coming to us now? I mean, this does not prevent you from doing any site planning and sort of thinking about exactly what you ultimately do want to do with the lot.
Yeah, well, we need to have the lots. We need to know that we have these lots before we can apply for relief with the zoning board. We need to know that we have the lot lines laid out. Because let me go back to the plan. Because what you're gonna see, this, if you notice, this is a beautiful home out back, which we're not planning on touching. This is just a monstrosity. It's a 4-unit building. It's kind of a, I don't mean to insult the Valenti families who my clients are on, but it's kind of a mess. And that is, as you can see, is gonna be raised. Lot 2 is where a single family home will be constructed. And then lot 1 is where we're talking about the garden type building. And until we have an endorsement on this plan, Mr. Chair, we can't go to the board and say these are lots that have been recognized by the planning board.
So Brian, you're also gonna need, you need to go to zoning to get relief. You're also gonna need to get approvals from the fire department, correct? In order to make
Correct.
sure they have access. proper
Correct.
Access.
Yeah, I mean, this project is gonna need a number of special permits, site plan approval, and I'm thinking a number of variances, which we think, again, we think the project will be something that people are gonna have a desire compared to what's out there. If they don't, we're not gonna get the relief because there's gonna be so much relief that's gonna be needed. We're trying to get creative with this property because it's such a, well, how do you phrase it, Jim? A rat's nest kind of? It's a good term because it is. It's just so much mixed stuff going on out there that doesn't make sense. And this is kind of like a one-time opportunity that for the Valentis to get their arms around this and kind of make it right.
Hmm. I'm
So
still not,
I've
go for it, Jim, or Matt, sorry.
I've given my thoughts on how I'm comfortable with this. That does not mean that there's not a majority of the rest of the members that are fine with this. So I put out there that I'm uncomfortable with this until I do some more investigation. That doesn't mean that, the rest of you can choose to endorse it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I would prefer to research this a little bit more and take this up at the next meeting to be fair. I still am a little just sort of the logic of, there's nothing to prevent you from being hypothetical now and thinking about what would be the 3 best lots to design, and then come to us and say, give us the A&R, so then we can go through the everything else, and still that would help you avoid a lot of duplicate effort.
I think that this, and I don't want to speak for Attorney McGrail, but I think from a process perspective, what I heard him say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why they're coming to us and trying to get an A&R is they've already done that work in terms of trying to get creative in terms of what is the best, most configurable lot geometry in order to accommodate their future plans. And the reason why they're coming to us for an endorsement of the A&R is to make sure that they can get those lots approved such that they can go and start asking the ZBA for the various forms of relief that they're going to need on a go forward process as they finalize whatever the final plan is going to be.
That's correct. And just part of that process, if I may, because it might be helpful. So when we looked at the plan, we want to be practical. We want to keep this house. It's a beautiful home. And we're doing it in a fashion that's not dissimilar to the way it's set up now. So we don't want to like just raise this whole thing and put a big project here. We want to keep the single family home. On lot 2, what we talked about was we said, all right, we've got a 4-unit here. You know, let's rebuild the 4 units here. And then we said, no, it's not going to fit right. So let's do 2. And then we said, no, that's not going to fit right either. We're only going to do 1. So I'm telling you right now, that's going to be a single family home. But both of these lots, 1 and 2, in order to be sustainable on their own and be sold, they have to have frontage. You have to have frontage. And the way we got frontage was to get creative by putting these kind of wings in. That's the way we did it. And then that leaves this lot for what I think is going to be very modest project at the end of the day. We're still planning it, but it would be designed to fit very much into, you know, residential style. And so that is exactly the thought process. And that's kind of why you see this rat's nest, because in order to save this, we have to create frontage. And in order to, you know, from a financial perspective, they can't just walk away from 4 units. They've got to at least get 1 house here, and then that leaves this. So it's been, John, we've had a lot of meetings on this, and this is kind of what we came up with.
So, all right, we've heard from Matt, Jim, Bill, and Megan. How do you want to proceed? Yeah, Bill.
Well, I'm just listening and reviewing the plan. Again, I took out markers and tried to understand more about it. This is a mess, as Attorney McGrail mentioned. I'm sure they looked at different plans, different reviews. I appreciate the amount of time to try to make it work. And as far as seeing a plan with a lot of information, I love it, because a lot of times we don't have all this information to have this discussion early on, and it's more difficult. So I do appreciate the work that's put into this plan. It's just so hard to look at lot 3 and see how that's going to work. And I know it's snaking there along that eastern side at the very top of the plan. And it's I think that's the part that maybe it just doesn't make sense to my brain. And that's what I'm having a hard time with. But that, again, as Matt said too, more research, I think, but not saying yes or no, or endorsing and not endorsing. Again, I appreciate the amount of work into this, but I just think we need a little bit more understanding on our own part of how that shared driveway is going to work, and how lot number 3 is going to have the access it needs to maintain that single family home that, until I saw this plan, I didn't know existed back there. So. I'd like to, I guess, just in last thought, I'd like to have this on the agenda at the next meeting for us to do our research, come back. And if there are any changes between now and then, if for some reason John's looking at this and like after the meeting figures out a different way to approach this, then that would be great for our board to have those plans as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Bill.
Actually, one last thought. You said, Attorney McGrail, you said there were other options that you worked out. And I know it's hard being at this place where we're just seeing the end result of a lot of different sequences of ideas and options put on the table. Were there any other options that were close to allowing lot 3 really to have its own driveway, either like right down the middle or some way, in a way that provided access?
No, we looked at that. I mean, John, do you want to touch on that at all? I mean, you have setback issues and stuff that we need to deal with on all.
For the
of
other
them.
lots, yeah.
And we thought that this wasn't too different from what's existing there now. Because, basically this is kind of what it's got. It's got a tighter pinch point, as I mentioned. But again, at the end of the day, what you're signing here is a conceptual plan of an A&R plan. You're not certifying. You're saying the lots have adequate frontage from a zoning perspective, and that's it. As Matt said, none of these lots are legal without relief from the zoning board. None of them. So, this is a plan that just allows us to get going with the process with them.
Right.
But it's not a reality plan if you don't include that common driveway easement. It's a non-reality plan. And that's where, so it's kind of, I understand from your perspective, it's kind of hard to look at it from that way, but that's what it is.
Okay.
Brian, why aren't these labeled not buildable lots then? Just because you're claiming, because you're touching the business zone, you're theoretically taking 40 feet that you could pull some cars on and park them there, correct?
Yeah.
Because you're taking one of the lots that had proper frontage and you're cutting it down to 40 feet.
I mean, that's an interesting point, Matt. That's something, I mean, so my thought on this, where we are now, I mean, as when I opened the hearing, I stated how much we want to work with everybody on this site. So I think I'd be very disingenuous to say to the board, hey, you've got to make a decision tonight. So I think what I'd like to do is this plan is not filed under your rules and regulations until it's accepted by you. So I don't think we want to submit the plan tonight.
Mhm.
Because that starts the clock ticking on you guys of the 21 days.
Mhm.
And I don't want to do that because, our goal is as I said at the beginning, is to work something out that's going to be really good for this site. So I respect your time that you need, and I want to honor that and allow that. So I have no problem this being put on your next agenda, but I would say that I would say for the record that we haven't submitted it tonight. Okay, because otherwise it puts you in a bad spot, because if your next meeting gets canceled, your 21 days go by, it's constructively approved. But I'm starting to think, Matt, maybe if lot 3 is where you have a problem, maybe we could do something like that to label it not buildable unless necessary relief is granted by the zoning board of appeals. That might be something to consider. That might be a good idea, Matt.
And yeah,
I never like to just put a word not buildable, because that just, then it's like, that creates a cloud. But if you put not buildable, unless appropriate relief or required relief is granted by the Board of Appeals, it's contemplated that might happen.
yeah, and I'd be more comfortable with that too. So
I mean, that might be a really good idea, because that could address what you're talking about on that lot.
because and my hesitancy on this is because we had one subdivision where a lot was carved out with frontage, but it took away the frontage from another lot. And then they had a right of way, but they labeled that not a buildable lot, even though there was an existing house on there and they were using a right of way as their access. So I'm cognizant of not getting into that issue again. And I see this being like that. So you chose not to have a easement at all. We would have created lots that really were impractical. So that's what where my hesitancy is about this, without looking into it some more. And I'm still not convinced on because part of the lot is in a business zone, that you're able to basically take frontage that you had and chop it down to 40 feet because you're crossing that. I need to look into that more. So
Yeah, that I'm pretty confident on, but I respect your need to look
you,
into that.
I'm sure you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it before,
Yeah.
but, but I understand your desire to look at it. I mean, from our perspective, worst case scenario, like I said, we would have to do a full application with you as a subdivision. And, we don't shy away from that. We don't think we need to. We'd rather, avoid the time to deal with two boards on the same project, but if we have to do it, we will, because we think we're gonna have a good project.
And like I said, I don't want to force anyone to do that either, but I want to make sure that it's done properly.
Yeah, that's fine. That's why I don't wanna, I think this has been a good discussion tonight. I appreciate it, and perhaps, let me look into Matt if I can do something on the non-buildability of 3 that might make you comfortable.
Okay.
One other thing before we hop off this, just because the a map of the case immediately flashed my eyes when I started looking at this, and I'm sure Attorney McGrail has a reason why this isn't necessarily be applicable. But is there a reason why the restrictions as it relates to access being illusory from Gifford versus Nantucket, and the series of all the lots that connect down? I mean, that's kind of exactly what the lot 3 reminded me of when I first saw this. Is there a reason why that wouldn't be applicable in terms of this particular?
Yeah, well, Gifford was a unique case, Jim, because that had like 63 lots or something. It was in Nantucket, I think, and it had all these lots, and some of those, it had necks like that were, some of them were like 1,200, 1,500 feet long that went way back. But so, I think that was a little bit unique. I think the Fox case that I cited and you brought up, the language in that case could have been better. Can you bring it up again, Jim? Oh, let me stop sharing.
Yeah, bear with me for a second.
I'm sorry. Let me figure out how to get out. Am I sharing now here?
For other members of the board, this is the the exact one that came to my mind, the Gifford case.
Yeah.
Where it's all these lots that the access is next down at significantly. That was the one that when you initially mentioned this, that's kind of where my head went. But
Yeah.
you want me to bring up the Fox?
Yeah, because again, just to bring up that what you had highlighted.
Yeah. No, there you go.
Yeah. So, subdivision this isn't well worded, I mean, because it says subdivision control law is concerned with access to the lot, not to the house. There is nothing in it that prevents the owners from choosing, if they are so inclined, to build their house far from the road with no provision for vehicular access, so long as their lots have the frontage that makes such access possible. What do they mean? Access possible to the lot or to the house? So it's not, it's when it says such access, what does such access refer to? The lot or the house? It's not well done. And Jim, to be honest with you, I could argue that both ways. I'm being honest and transparent with you, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, because that was where my head initially went, right? Is that the access being provided by this, right? I think that I don't think anyone here, if you think about the 3 things you have to do, is adequacy of the way, is the frontage sufficient, and then is the access illusory.
Mhm.
I think that the way is clearly fine, right? It's Salem Street. The frontage, Matt brought up a good point as it relates to the zoning component of it, but if assuming 40 feet is sufficient, obviously you have the 40 feet, and then it just becomes a matter of, is access illusory? And if the question is, to your point, do you just need access to the lot, which this 40 feet, you could theoretically, and to your point, park a car here, or is it access to the house in the back? And that's what to be honest, that to Matt's point, I'd want to go back and take a look at it
Yeah.
a little closer myself.
Well, that case, it's kind of contradictory. I mean, you could argue it a couple of different ways. So, but we might be able to deal with lot 3 anyways. That's what I'm talking about, because that seems to be the stickler, and perhaps we can come up with some language that will go on the plan that would make the board comfortable that you're not, for lack of a better term, when you look at the lot, you're not sticking your neck out on lot 3.
I think that seems, I mean, from, not to speak for other members of the board, but to me, that feels like a fair way to move forward in terms of trying to come up with something that allows you to get the A&R plan, but also satisfies our needs.
Yeah, I think we're all basically in agreement. So I would thank the Valenti family, Mr. Ogren and Mr. McGrail. This has been a useful review, and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Yes, thank you. It's been good for us. So for the record, we are not submitting that plan tonight.
Yes.
Okay, just so you know, and for your
Agreed.
record, it's not being submitted, and
Yeah.
we'll look at it and some possible revisions. We'll ask for to put it on the next meeting.
All right.
Hey, Brian, but just one last thing before you go. That back house there has a garage to it, correct?
Yes, it does.
Thank you, John.
So to say you have access over a 5-foot strip when you have a garage, I mean, I understand your legal argument, but again, practically speaking, it's, and I just pulled it up on on Bing Maps so I can look at it. So that's why I'm a little skeptical of that. That's why.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to make arguments. I want to find resolutions, and I think we can probably do that on lot 3.
okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for your
again,
time. Really appreciate all the time.
all right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The fifth item on our agenda is to discuss our continuing revision of subdivision rules and regulations. Is that something we want to continue with tonight, Matt, or?
I haven't got to the edits. Basically, I need to do the edits, and then we're going to pass them along to engineering and have them start commenting on it.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing to discuss at this point.
Right.
I think we went through it all last time.
Mhm.
The only remaining items were really all engineering related
That's
things
right,
that need
okay.
to look at. So, and I'm still working on that.
I very much appreciate it. So thank you. Item 6. We put this on the agenda. This is our update on the MBTA communities law, and I'll turn this over to Jim.
Yep. So thank you, Theo. I will pull up as other members of the board probably saw. I pushed this kind of proposed process in terms of getting a working group assembled to address this, to address and to start developing the first pass for any proposed zoning to be proposed to be in conformance with the MBTA overlay district as set forth by the state. Just for a quick summary, for if in case other members of the board haven't reviewed it, the end goal of this is to have an open and transparent process where we solicit feedback from the public. Then, and the way that we would do that would be to host 2 to 3 public forums over the next time frame to be determined by this board. After that, the thought would be we would collect feedback, we would present to the town council and request the working group to be formed, and then to have the working group with an undefined number of meetings in person. But the intent of that group would be to define the initial proposed overlay district, determine the next communication steps, and then refer to town council or the planning board, depending on the result of this process, for next steps. The thought being that we are soliciting input from the public. We make presentations to the public in our public forums as part of the planning board, and then we take that information, we then synthesize it, we send it to the town council, and we ask for them for the mandate to form this working group, which could then meet in open meetings. Is the way I'm thinking about it, but obviously open to other members of the board input. But the intent would be to have that not be a public meeting for public input, but to have the working group put their heads down concentrate on the tasks associated with it, internalize the feedback that is solicited from the public via these public forums and the town council presentation, create a starting point for the zoning, which would then allow the different stakeholders to go out to the balance of the town and start communicating that, soliciting additional feedback for any adjustments that may or may not be required after that initial. So the reason why I wanted to present this to this board is to, one, make sure, I know I've had a number of conversations with different members of the board, as well as, started to push this to other relevant stakeholders, but wanted to get feedback from other members of the board to see if everyone felt comfortable with this. If so, then my intention is, would, in conjunction with Bill, who's been helping me put this together, would be to start spreading it to other relevant stakeholders, such as the town council, and soliciting their feedback, and then potentially start putting some dates associated with some of these activities on the books. Just to kind of some of the items in terms of where I think some of these elements are trending. Working group members, from talking to different members of town council and the planning board, kind of the working starting point, at least for what the proposed working group would be the members of the planning board, X number of representatives from town council. I strongly advocate for as many as possible, but I think that'd be subject to availability and willingness, frankly. Representative from Concom, representative from Board of Appeals, Community and Economic Development staff, or Aaron, DPW representative, town engineer. There's others that I think are subject to, I think that there's been some good feedback from different members of both this board, as well as, Wakefield Town Gas Light. Is that someone who would want to be part of this or not, because of the implications for future utility? Looking for input from members of this board, so we can start reaching out to other members of these potential working group participants in order to see if there is interest from those representative bodies to be part of this process. And then just high level for people, kind of the proposed timeline would be to have public forums from the planning board, where we would have a presentation from the planning board to the public, and then solicit feedback similar to what we were going to do for the Lake Overlay District, but basically take the information that Steve Mayo presented to town council, collate that, kind of explain to people what it is that non-conformance would result in the town losing, what would be the steps for conformance with this, the requirements, density, minimum acreage, location, all of those types of elements. And then once you do that, solicit, if people from the town council are amenable to it, I would propose that we have a presentation to town council sometime in January, where we present the results of the feedback we've gotten from the public from these number of public forums, request the working group to be appointed, and then that would give us the mandate publicly to start this working group. And then I think there's obviously, as we get closer to it, I think there'd be a number of additional steps between now and then to define what that working group, what does that look like. But I wanted to put this up, present this to the board, see if other people felt that this was appropriate, and if they had any comments, questions, or concerns, and then start trying to define what would be next steps as it relates to other folks to reach out to and or solicit feedback from.
Can I just chime in? This is a question, as I was doing more digging after we talked last time, Jim. When I'm looking at the action plan that we need to have filled out by January 31st, there's a few questions about what we look at as our zone potentially being, whether that's already a zone that we have, a potential that falls within the 3A already, or that could be amended, which could be our mixed use district. And so those are things that best of our knowledge, it says, but based on the timeline presenting to the town council, which I think we need to talk through a little more too, after myself having some discussions on exactly what that looks like. I think we just need to kind of not nail down, because it's the best of your knowledge, but have kind of a better idea of, having that action plan ready to be submitted for the 31st. And then the action plan, as you know, too, just has the timeline, and which is very helpful of what the town's looking to do. So I don't know if there's any sort of meetings that we want to have prior when we're talking about what we're thinking of doing, but that's kind of hard to do if we haven't had this working group yet either. So that's all I had to say.
Well, I was wondering, it seems like the working group would be a key component of the action plan. So does that follow? So, I mean, you could have part of the timeline of the working group would be following the timeline of the action plan. Is that?
So Aaron, I think that's a great point in terms of, there is a compliance checkpoint that we need to achieve between now and then. I think probably would make sense is to, if, as we continue the conversations between now and the end of the year and get other relevant stakeholders bought in on this process to get the working group teed up, I think to your point, we probably need to have an eye on how long do we, what does that process want to look like? And how long do we think it would want to be? And then maybe what are some of the, I know that, for example, with the meeting, that presentation from Mr. Mayo to the town council, there were some, not proposed, but representative maps that were drawn. I would think that would be a good starting point if we're talking about things that we're looking at as a starting point. That would be my initial feedback. But again, I think that as we, I don't think it's necessarily like I think that more people would, as we get more people involved in the process, I think that would maybe get fleshed out a little bit more between now and the 31st of January.
And one more question. I know we've kind of talked about this too, but just new thoughts come to my head when we talk through it a little more. The public forums, is it just like we're educating people what this is, or are we asking people for their feedback when they don't really have an education of, maybe they hear one thing, but there's so many layers behind it as well? Because I think we can all, it's great, feedback's awesome. But I feel like with this topic, it's a little contentious. And what sort of feedback are we going to be getting that's helpful? So I know we have, and I know those are 3 dates. Are we thinking, and just this is a reminder to me, of doing it 3 times or just once, just one of those dates? I couldn't remember.
So the way that this is laid out right now, and again, I just laid this out for the board to review and provide feedback. So I'm not saying this is set in stone by any stretch. I'm just looking to get feedback. But the way that I was envisioning this when I was trying to lay it out is that we, at the 25th of October, 22nd November, December 13th, public forums that we'd have as part of the planning board, the intent would be to have a presentation by a member of the planning board explaining what this 40A is, explaining what the requirements are, what the impact would be if we don't conform with it. So laying out some of the groundwork in terms of the educational component for the public, and then soliciting some level of feedback in terms of, based on all of these components that are being dictated by the state, where would be, what are some of the things that are important to other members of the public. I'm sensitive to the fact that, to your point, Aaron, the quality of the feedback, based on the quality of the feedback, frankly, we got from the Lake District, there's an definite concern as it relates to the quality of that feedback. However, I think that from my perspective, it would behoove us to give the opportunity of the public to provide feedback, such that if there is constructive feedback that's helpful, that helps guide it, we incorporate that into the process before we formulate the working group, such that the working group can be guided by any feedback from the public that came from that process.
Jim, I have a question. So ultimately, any zoning change needs to go to town council, and then we'd be doing the public hearing. But for the working group, the entire board, planning board would be on the working group, right? So how do we separate us reviewing something that we've worked on collectively during that whole process?
So honestly, that's one of the things that I've been struggling with the most in terms of figuring out what does this working group want to look like? You know, is it appropriate to have all the members of the planning board? Does it make sense to have a subsection of the members of the planning board? And frankly, I think that that's a component that I go back and forth on a lot. And I definitely welcome other members of the board's input as to what they think is the most appropriate for that.
I think as a process standpoint, having all of the planning board members on there, and then at some point having a public hearing where we're supposed to basically listen to both sides, it doesn't sound like we would be coming from we'd be more defensive on what we're presenting instead of critically hearing what comments are coming in. And I think that would be a perceived issue with the public, is that the entire board's in on it already, and now you're forcing this on the town, just from past experiences.
I've had some conversations too internally, and I would advise against having all the planning board members.
If that's the case, is there a threshold? Do we think that it would make sense to have 2, because that does not constitute a working quorum or majority?
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, that's our general understanding, right? 2 and no more.
Well, other boards have working groups that work on things and report back to the board.
Mhm.
But this is more working collaboratively with the public and others.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
in this case, I don't think we'd want to have more than 1 or 2 on there, just to show that there are some board members that are going to hear this basically close to the first time when it's presented and have to act critically from both sides.
Mhm.
I think that seems like a prudent action. If
Yeah.
that's what people think is more appropriate, then I think that makes a lot of sense. We can update this, and as we continue to ask other stakeholders what they think of it.
Terrific.
Did anyone else have any other people who they think may make sense to reach out to in terms of potential working group members or people that we should start engaging with in the process who might also be relevant stakeholders associated with this if we're pulling something together?
The Environmental Sustainability Committee would, I'm not sure they need to be a member of the working group. They would be certainly welcome, but definitely having them as you know, a really an expert set of opinion makers would be really helpful.
And maybe a representative of the school system.
Oh, that's a very good point too.
And put on here somehow, community groups, people that, let's say, deem themselves spokespeople for others to have a seat at the table. And so
Okay, I'll put them on the list of people to start reaching out to as
Yeah.
part of this process. The other thing I wanted to get consensus on with the members of this board is, if are people comfortable with me starting to share this process with other relevant stakeholders and starting to solicit input from potential members of the working group, and then to start collating a presentation in advance of that late October presentation to the, that public forum that we're envisioning, and then maybe push that to the board between now and the next planning board meeting, and we can review if needed.
I certainly am, because I really appreciate the effort and the consideration that you're making for it. And I also want to be able to help, but I really appreciate you getting all of this going. So. How Megan, Bill, or Matt have, if you have other thoughts.
No, I just want to add, Theo, thanks, Jim, for pulling all the info together, and thanks for asking me to participate. I do, yeah, I like the idea of us being proactive and jumping on this and getting whoever we can. So, part of the goal tonight is to find out, is this the group we want as the working group? So, no, I don't really have any other comments other than what Jim shared and what we've been discussing.
Terrific. All right. So
One question I have is
Yeah.
the time frame on this. I mean, you want to have a public forum in a month. With this group, or how are you?
No, so I apologize if I didn't make that clear. So what I'm proposing on doing is having a public forum, which would be similar to what we did for the Lake Overlay District, where we'd have a public forum, just the planning board, and that we would have a public forum, we would have a presentation of what this is, and then solicit feedback from the public, and then the way that the proposed timeline I outlined, have 3 of those on a monthly cadence. So there's 3 different opportunities for the public to attend if they are interested, and spaced out a month each time, so it's not necessarily like 1, 2, 3. And then so hopefully you have the first public forum, maybe the word gets out, it increases the interest, then you basically do the same thing. You have the same presentation. This is what this is, dictated by the state. Here are the grant programs that we are at risk of losing access to if we don't comply with it. Here are the major highlights in terms of things you do need to comply with. Here's some of the timelines associated with those different elements. And then that allows, you kind of set the table and then allow the public to comment from there.
But wouldn't the public forum process go through the working group and not the planning board? Again, you're kind of conflating the board into everything for these public forums, and then you're separating it into a working group and then bringing it back to the board basically for the final public hearing before it goes to town meeting.
I think Matt, and the way I kind of view it is, we have, as the planning board, a series of public forums. We get feedback from the public. We then would refer, we'd vote to, refer it to town council, assuming that we get alignment with town council. We give the same type of presentation to town council, solicit public feedback from in that time. Then the town council would basically vote to form the working group, and we would have consensus with folks in terms of who to put on the working group. Then the working group would go and develop, without continuing to solicit public feedback, but the working group would work and try to put their heads down, take all the feedback accumulated in the front end, synthesize that into an initial proposed zoning district change, which then could then be presented to all the relevant bodies, planning board obviously being one, town council, because I'm assuming that this is going to be a relatively high profile topic. And then if we as a planning board wanted to make additional changes or whatnot, I mean, I would imagine that from the working group to the warrant, there's probably going to be some sort of, communications with the public. This is what we heard. This is what's required by the state. Here's what the proposed zoning district is. There's probably, I would imagine, and this is just me guessing, but as part of the working group, I'm sure that there would be a next action items defined by that group in terms of how you go from whatever that end deliverable is to the getting referred to on the town warrant. I don't think this is like the working group meets 3 or 4 times and then we have a public hearing on the planning board and then it's on the town warrant. I think there's probably some steps in between it going on the warrant and when the working group ends their work. But honestly, I think that that's going to be for the working group when we get the consensus on who's on it and then we get it established. I think it'd be up for them to determine what the end product ends up being.
Okay.
Does that help? Does that make sense, or is that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just don't know if we'll be ready to have a public forum in a month. There's a lot of education that's going to need to be done before people can start giving critical input, and that's a big process there that I don't think we're prepared to do in this short a time frame, truthfully.
I honestly, I think the lion's share of the work was already done by Steve Mayo in his presentation at town council. There's since that time, there's been some additional guidance because the final guidance came out. But I think the high level, what is this? How does it affect us? What are some of the high level requirements? I think a lot of that level of discussion is something that we could probably take a lot of that material that's already been produced and make it, quote unquote, make it our own, and then get ready for a public forum where we're kind of presenting all those different things on the educational front and then soliciting feedback in terms of, high level, what would the public want to see from those different types of things. That's my sense of things, but if people disagree, definitely open to hearing that.
Again, thank you, Jim. It makes sense to me. I do think, October 25th really would be educational and getting, sort of reintroducing what this is and what, like Jim said, the opportunities and the risks or the cons for what we, just sort of explaining what it is to help, I think, help try to make it more understandable and not as foreign or as sort of unknown and threatening. So that, it might be more Q&A about what it is, and that would help. There may be some things that we can't answer. So like, all right, that's something we, to be considered, and we're certainly not making any representation of making any decisions yet. But I think also, to Jim's point, presenting even this process so that people have a sense of it. All right. So sounds like we're comfortable moving forward. Is that all right? Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you, Jim. And we will pick this up again at the next meeting and continue to follow it along. But I really appreciate it. The last item on our agenda are items not anticipated by the chair. So does anyone have things to bring up? I have a number of process things, and certainly Aaron, want to invite you as well. Okay.
If no one else is going to chime in, I won't take away from the stuff that's on the agenda. I'll let you cover that, Theo.
Sure.
But I know this was brought up last time. I think I had to get off or just was distracted by my kids. But I have been in talks. As you all know, we're working on our master plan. The Conservation Commission is taking the lead on updating kind of doing over our open space and recreation plan. And I know that would love to have someone from the planning board to be a committee member. I myself will be a committee member. It should be only 5 meetings, and I don't have the set dates currently. I know everyone's time, you spend 2 to 3 hours here on every other Tuesday. But I think with us doing the master plan and open space and environment sustainability and how important that is to the town right now, it would be really to the town, and within our master plan, just making sure that they line up with each other, I think would be really helpful. So I just wanted to put that plug out there because I've been talking to them. And that, I think, it was the main thing I just wanted to bring up tonight. I might chime into other things that you may bring up, Theo.
Yeah, no. Is that, when do you need us to commit or not?
From my understanding, they were going to be appointing people, I believe, at their last meeting. And then they're still, if you know anyone in the public too that would be interested, they do have that open for people that are in the public that want to be on the committee. I think they'll be doing it again at their next meeting, but I can double check.
Okay.
When, I know that you said these aren't scheduled, but when-ish are they envisioned to commence,
I think sooner than later.
Okay.
Yeah, from my understanding.
Okay. So if not tonight, at our next meeting, we'll try to have a representative. Is there any way of doing this as a relay? One of us attending 2 meetings and then someone else attending in the other 2. Is that?
I don't have the answer to that. I think they probably would want the same person just for consistency purposes. Sure. But I can ask tomorrow.
Okay. I'm not Matt Lowry, but I play him on TV. That would be the idea. All right. And thank you for bringing up the master plan. The next meeting is October 19th at the Galvin. It's in person. It's really fantastic. I think we really just want to ask the board to help circulate and get the word out. Aaron, you've got a flyer, or you and Jen have a flyer. So if folks don't have it, I'll send it to you, or Aaron can send it to you. And yeah.
And Theo, just to add to that, it's at 6:30. A lot of people think meetings start at 7, but this one's at 6:30.
Yes, thank you. Aaron, you had also brought up tri-board meetings, and that's I think something that we want to sort of, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. So I know it was brought up at the town council probably last spring, but I don't know where time goes, about the chairs of Concom, ZBA, and the planning board meeting, informal meeting, not a public meeting, just to discuss kind of rules and regs, current projects that are going on, how we can streamline some more processes that are going through, just having those conversations, because they, as we've seen with some of the projects that have come here, they go to Concom and hear something different, and they have to abide by their rules and regs. And I understand they're always going to be different, but I think just having those conversations between chairs and some of our internal departments that we do have, but with the chairs as well, could be helpful. So I'm hoping to have an initial meeting with the chairs sometime in, I think I said November. I just know this time of the year is just swamped. So trying to find some time that works for everyone, and keeping it informal. So I know everyone has full-time jobs on top of this.
That would be great if someone convinced the ZBA to actually kind of go digital with their submissions. So we can all view them and share them with the public. That would be nice.
As mentioned before, this has been brought up, and I think Gail Conroy would agree with that as well. Just something that has to be changed in their rules and regs, and there's systems out there that you can do it. So we'll just keep bringing it up.
Right. We actually have two very friendly opportunities to do so, because we're going to share a table with the ZBA at Town Day and also at the Wakefield 101. So which is my next item. Is there, do folks have time to participate at Town Day? We'll have it runs from 12 to 4, and we will have a table. We'd like to have some stuff out. And
Yeah, Theo, I'll be running back and forth between the Safe Streets table and the planning board ZBA table. So right now, that's the plan. We have
All
the
right.
Safe Streets. We have our meeting, just to plug, tomorrow night
very
at
good.
7. Zoom link. If you go to a Safe Streets Wakefield, let me just make sure. Yeah, safestreetswakefield.com, and the link and everything for the meeting tomorrow from 7 to 8 o'clock, and we do end at 8. Sorry, Theo. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. That's great. So
So sorry to sound ill-informed. When is Town Day?
October 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this weekend,
Next
No,
week.
next weekend.
next weekend.
okay.
Don't say this weekend. Yeah, just so you know, everyone on this board, if you haven't heard yet, the town is coordinating. It's kind of like a second Fall in Love with Wakefield, but we're calling it Town Day. There'll be music, a beer garden, a food court. We have like 70 exhibitors signed up. Demonstrations. If you have young kids, they'll be doing a soccer type demonstration that your kids can sign up for, a cornhole tournament. So please keep your fingers crossed that it's nice and sunny that day.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, and just a fun idea too. I've just been working with some different exhibitors, especially with boards, is like thinking of something, a fun project for kids at your table. So whether that be like, I was just Googling like urban coloring pages, or if you can think of something creative. I mean, as much as people probably would love to hear about MBTA communities and what the planning board does, I think what really is going to attract them is if you have things for the kids, and then you guys can have those conversations. So just wanted to put that out there.
I was thinking gazebo face painting. No, that's terrific. Would love anybody's ideas. So please.
Maybe a little coffee mugs of Legos that people can sit and build stuff.
Yeah, yeah. All right, spoken like an architect. That's beautiful. That's great. Terrific. I just saw two other things that were on the town council's agenda. It looks like there may be an environmental sustainability committee spot opening for a new student member. And potentially a spot, a ZBA seat opening up. So, and if no one has anything else to discuss, very happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just have one other thing. The
Sure.
bike ped plan, we should be having the
Oh, yeah.
final presentation for that on Monday, October 24th at the town council. So
Alright.
I know some of you have been involved with that, have attended meetings, so just mark your calendars.
Great. Thank you very much. That wasn't on my radar. I appreciate that. All right. I appreciate all of our discussion tonight. And so without further ado, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
I will second.
Thank you, Megan. Second. All in favor, Jim?
Yes.
All right, Bill,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and myself, yes. This is great. Thank you, everybody. We're pushing stuff along, and we'll get that bylaw amended. So thank you. Talk to
Thanks,
you all soon.
Theo. Have a good night.
Yeah.
See you
good
guys.
night, everybody.
Good night.
You're a very patient woman, Susan. Bye.